Hello and welcome to A Novel Idea, the show where we interview authors. And my name is Noelle Bach. I am your host today, and we are welcoming Maggie Thrash.
Hello. I'm very pleased to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming down, Maggie. So you have a brand new book out, Rainbow Black, and let's do some chatting about your book. So, as I was telling you earlier, I just finished it yesterday. So it was really an engaging book in a lot of ways, like just very...
I wanted to make a good old-fashioned page turner.
Yeah, that would be a goal that has been fulfilled.
Thank you.
The story. And it's not a happy story. I wouldn't say we can call it happy at all. So where did the genesis for this story come from? Like, where did you get this idea?
Well, I've been fascinated by the Satanic Panic for a very long time. I was born in 1985, so I was too young to remember the Satanic Panic when it happened. But when I was a teenager around the year 2000, I asked my librarian if we could form a Dungeons and Dragons club with the library. And she said, "We can't do that. Don't you know that Dungeons and Dragons turns children into satanic murderers?"
What?
And I had no idea that Dungeons and Dragons did that. And that was the first time I realized that there was something percolating under the surface, that a significant portion of Americans believed in this kind of satanic conspiracy pocket of culture. And I just became really fascinated by it.
Ah, interesting. So we'll give, it's like always hard to talk about some books like this because you don't want to give away too much. Right? Anything about them.
A lot happens.
Yeah, a lot happens. So if you were going to give a bare bones about what the book's about, like what would you say?
I would say it's a legal drama essentially that takes place during the Satanic Panic, but it's also a love story. It's a Bildungsroman. I tried to kind of genre defy. I really didn't want to be hemmed into anything.
So you went there.
Mm-hmm.
So
I went as many places as I could.
You went a lot. Yeah, you go a lot of places in this book. So we're starting off with the book with a teenager, and she's very kind of dewy-eyed, I guess we'll say, right? in the storyline, just kind of willing to kind of look at the best of people.
She's an innocent.
She is an innocent. Now, do you feel like that reflects how you were at that time period too?
I feel like I was a very sheltered child, and our protagonist Lacey is a sheltered child. I also it's a book that's set in New Hampshire, and I like to present kind of New Hampshire and New England in general as kind of like a paradise lost, like a place, where Lacey was truly happy until what happens in the book is that her parents, who own a preschool, are arrested as part of this satanic hysteria that, is a real life phenomenon that happened in the 80s, where real preschool teachers were arrested and charged with grotesque, extreme counts of satanic ritual child abuse. Millions of dollars were spent trying to put innocent preschool teachers in jail. There was never any evidence found that any of this ever happened. It was truly just a national mania. And it was kind of this cultural hysteria that that Americans consumed almost as entertainment, and then we kind of forgot that it ever happened. But I wanted to tell a story about, a character who's affected by this, and when we as television consumers forget, her life goes on, and she can never forget because she's so stained by it.
Now, of course, we're in Danvers, Massachusetts, which was the original Salem Village.
Yeah.
so talking about hysterias, and and until I read this book again, or not again, read it for the first time, I've kind of forgotten about this whole satanic thrill, I guess I will say, that people had, during these time periods. Here in Danvers, like we don't forget, like it's a big part of the history of this area, right? So we don't ever forget about the Salem witch trials.
It's true. It feels very appropriate that we're having this conversation in Danvers. And I wonder, as in Danvers, do you sort of feel any resentment towards Salem for kind of exploiting it as this touristy destination when really it happened here? Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, like the Danvers was the place where most of the action really happened. Not that some didn't happen there. And yeah, they managed to pick it up and run with it, and good for them. It's I mean, there are some it's interesting now because there are some memorial spots here in town, right, of different sites. And so those spots are starting to gain a little bit more attention because Salem has become so overexposed, and people come, like millions of people show up in October. Like we like joke around about how Salem, the streets are lava in October, don't go there. Like I would never go to Salem in October. And but people are now, because they're kind of getting boxed out of some of the things in Salem, are starting to turn their attention to Danvers and coming to see some of the sites here. And there are like a couple of people who are leading some tours now to go through the historic sites in Danvers. So Danvers has started kind of getting a little bit of the light.
I just feel so much of this book and what I wanted to write about is Americans' appetite for sensationalizing and revising history. To make it more entertaining, to make it more dramatic, and how that can be harmless. It can also ruin lives,
right,
when we do this. And do you think it's harmless that Salem is kind of taken the spotlight away from Danvers, or do y'all feel like resentment about it?
I mean, personally, I don't have real feelings about it, but it's an interesting thing because it's a lot of, from a point of view, if you want to say, as media or marketing point of view, right? There's a lot of money like going into Salem because of their reputation and having,
it's not really about what the truth is.
It's not really about what the truth is. But on the other side of that, like, would we really want that here in Danvers, right? Because then you're inviting the circus.
No, because that kind of attention ends up being completely toxic, which is what I try to explore in the book.
Right, and so a couple of things that I wanted to highlight about the book too, as I was going through, was that piece that you were so when Lacey is adult, I don't give away too much, when she's an adult and she's looking back, like her viewpoint of what happened, of course, is extremely skewed, but of course what happened to her was also very extreme, and she keeps till you're talking about it like, I can't go back there because they're waiting and it's going to immediately be like, we're going to attack and get you again. And I thought that was like a really interesting message to be pulling across of, can you ever escape something like that happening to you? Are you always going to be fated to have it all come back up and be this thing that you'll never get away from? And and what she finds out, right, is it's true and untrue. Like some of it's true, some of it's untrue, like what her expectations are. But it all happened when she was so young, impressionable teenager that she can't in her head escape what she thinks is going to happen.
Yeah, she develops a phobia of America. She becomes the story follows her. I wanted to start with Lacey as a child, a true innocent, and we see all of this hysteria unfold around her and traumatize her and affect her life. And then it was really important to me to follow her into adulthood, because often with these sorts of media hysterias, we never follow up with the people harmed by them. We just kind of forget about them, and it's always like, I wonder whatever happened to that guy we were all scapegoating 10 years ago. So I wanted to show, like, well, what happens to a person who has to carry the trauma of this extreme media attention and scapegoating into adulthood. And, she is in Canada now, which and has this extreme phobia of ever having to go back to America, because for her, America is the trauma. And as long as she's not in America, she can make herself believe that, she's okay. The trauma isn't inside her heart, it's in America, the land of the scary Puritans. But of course, that doesn't really work out. The trauma is in our hearts, and I think it generally comes out eventually.
Right. Yes.
One of the I won't curse on the show, but one of the first lines in the book is Lacey's older sister tells her, "If you have a secret, you're screwed," and I do sort of believe that we are a culture that equates having secrets and having privacy to lying. And we really love exposing people. We find it very entertaining. We find it very salacious. We almost can't resist it. And I think, especially as we become more and more of basically like a surveillance state with the social media companies watching our every move and people posting everything, privacy is becoming more and more taboo in a way. Like, what do you have to be private about? Are you hiding something? Are you a criminal? So I find all those issues extremely interesting.
Yeah, and that's another piece that I thought was interesting in the book too. Like, and I say, like, now's generation don't understand privacy, like the way we understand privacy, or would be like, no, we don't want that information out there.
They don't feel an entitlement to it. They don't realize it's their right to have privacy. Yes. And for me, that's very scary. My right to not share is as important as my right to share if I want to.
Right. And what Lacey experiences while she's in Canada, as well as like her fear of getting to some point where she or her girlfriend get, recognized, right, elsewhere.
And have to be defined by, this trauma that they ran away from.
Right, yeah. One of the other points I thought was really interesting that you were working through in the book was Lacey's parents. And again, she's very innocent in the beginning, and then her parents get arrested for this, really horrific crime that they didn't commit. And just her, like that, parents are people too, I thought was like a really great theme that you had going through the book as well, because you forget, right? You picture your parents in a certain way, and they are just your parents. They're nobody else. And I always felt like that way about just like I have 3 other siblings, and I feel that way about my siblings in general too. It's kind of like they are seen through the frame of you and your life growing up with them, but not as these individuals and until you're older, and then you suddenly like, oh, they're actually also people, they're their own things. And I liked that you didn't abandon the parents because that was a piece you could have just decided not to deal with them again in the end, but you brought them back in.
No, it was important to me to show that even though these parents are innocent of the crimes that they committed, they're not just cardboard cutouts of innocence. They are flawed people who are not perfect. And Lacey, while struggling with wanting to remain loyal to her parents when the entire country has turned against them, is also realizing they're not satanic pedophiles, but they're not as perfect as she thought they were.
Right. And she has a very reversal of which parent that she becomes more dependable, I guess, in the end to her and everything too. And I always find that's a fascinating thing to think about is, who these people are that raised you, and where she came from. And it's also and she has an older sister. Lacey has an older sister, Claire, and how Claire turns out compared to how Lacey is as just a person in general, and their dynamic, I think is also just a very interesting. Do you have any siblings?
I have an older sibling who's nothing like a Claire. If anything, I guess I'm a Claire in that relationship, but my older sibling is extremely quiet, extremely shy. I had an amazing friend in middle school named Emily, who's in the acknowledgement section, and she was kind of a Claire-like, and she was just larger than life, wasn't afraid of anybody. And to me, she just hung the moon. And when you have that first relationship where you're really looking up to someone and seeing they're living like that, it's so exciting, and I think that sticks with you forever.
Yeah, yeah. And I thought that, Lacey's always looking back at what things that Claire said to her as to ways to help guide her.
It's a sort of a compass.
Yeah, yeah. I thought that was really, really interesting.
Oh, thank you.
Too, to go through. And then the other piece that I really, really liked about your book was when you delve really into the LGBTQ rights that were happening in Quebec at this period of time when she's in Canada too, which, because we're so American-centric, can't lie, that's just true how it is. So it was interesting to me to kind of see where, it's a little bit back in time, from right now, but just where those rights were happening and what was happening in the scene at that time as well. Did you have to do some research into that to see what was going on?
Yeah, I did. And, we are so American-centric that, and we're so self-congratulatory about
right.
our gay marriage, we're so great. But Canada was there way ahead of us. They had gay marriage legalized in 2006. So the second half of the book takes place in 2006, and I wanted to show Lacey's kind of cultural whiplash where she grew up in America being witch hunted in this extremely puritanical, old school 1700s way, and then comes to Canada where suddenly she could marry her girlfriend if she wants. And the whiplash of that, the journey of that, the disorientation of that, the feeling of mistrust that she has that this can't really be real. Canada, this must be a trick. I'm going to get the rug pulled out under me. It can't all be this nice. And of course, she creates kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy where her paranoia and her anxiety of that happening ends up making it happen.
Yeah, that is true. And I felt, it's funny, probably one of the moments I felt the worst for Lacey was when she gets outed as actually being American. And her friend is like, "What? You're not Quebecois?"
Like a knife to the chest,
She's like, "I am."
No, and I wanted to show too that because she has hippie parents who had never made her feel that being queer was something to be ashamed of. She never really experienced that, but then when she comes to Canada, her roots of being American is something that is this shameful secret that she harbors. So she gets to kind of experience that adolescent, closeted feeling as an adult, but about her national identity, not her sexual identity.
Yeah, which I thought was a really nice twist. I was like, oh, this is interesting. She finds her people in Canada and everything's great, but then the secret shame is being American. Which, I'll say, having lived abroad and stuff myself too, that, yeah, it can feel like a shame.
It can. Yeah, I had I remember I went to Italy the summer I graduated from high school, and this was the peak of Europeans absolutely despising George Bush. And I remember the ticket taker saw my American passport and said, get off, we hate George Bush here. And I had to be like, I do too, don't worry. And I got to stay on the train. But I say this I find sort of ceaseless America bashing to be pretty uninteresting. I'm not here to just say there's nothing good about America.
No, there's good things about America.
There's good things about America, especially New England. I absolutely love New England. I love New Hampshire. I think the American experiment, we highlight its failures so often, but it is a worthy experiment. And I do, in a cheesy way, believe in America and hope for America.
You're not secretly wishing to go to Canada.
I moved, I'm from the South. I moved to New Hampshire. I moved as close to Canada as I could get while still being in America. But I believe in America. I believe we can make something great out of what we've done.
Which I also believe there's plenty of potential.
Yes.
Still left.
Sometimes it's hard to see
America.
that. But
sometimes it's hard to see that. I don't know. Have you ever seen the movie The American President?
Oh yeah, that was hugely one of my favorite movies as a kid.
I love that movie too. And just at the end, when Michael Douglas makes his big speech, and just like, and it's kind of like the pinnacle of America is that, having somebody, yell in your face about something that you completely oppose and would spend the rest of your life yelling back at them, and that's America, and that's like what we are able to do in America, and you can't do it everywhere else. So that's.
And it really is, for better or worse, America is a nation founded on ideals, and the extent to which we have betrayed those ideals over the decades and corrupted those ideals, that is a whole conversation. But even just the fact of being a nation where we wrote our own rules, that was extremely radical at the time. And I feel like people kind of forget that.
That is true. All right, so we're going to take a break so that you can read a little bit from your book, and then we'll chat some more after.
Great. I turned on the TV just to feel less deathly alone. Sally Jesse Raphael was hosting a debate between Christians and witches. A woman with white hair and a foreign accent was trying to explain that she didn't, in fact, worship Satan. "I'm sorry I'm not evil enough for you, Sally. The truth is that witches worship nature. Nature is a force." A bald man representing the Christians of America interrupted her. "There are no morals in nature. An earthquake has no morals. You can't live in harmony with an erupting volcano. I don't want to go back to the jungle. Mankind has been trying to arise from the natural order." To which the witch responded, "No, no, no. If there is no jungle, there is no air. You can go around in your concrete structures, but there will be no air." "You stupid, stupid hippie," I muttered. She thought she could just go on TV and explain that she was a nice person and everyone would understand. But no one wanted to believe her. For some reason, they wanted to believe in Satan. They were the Satanists. I flipped through the channels, but it was like the entire world had checked into a mental institution. A violent fever dream of a commercial filled the screen. A giant anthropomorphic pitcher of Kool-Aid crashing through a cement wall like a wrecking ball before turning into a boombox playing loud atonal music to see-through people with Kool-Aid running through their veins like blood. "Jesus," I said to no one. I snapped the TV off, but still felt tense and afraid, as if the Kool-Aid man could come crashing through the wall at any moment and I'd die a blood-red Kool-Aid death. I pictured myself 6 months in the future, locked in a bunker, every creak and squeak the portent of a murderous intruder. I wanted the house to feel safe again. I wanted my mother. I imagined the sadness on her face if she knew my mind was collapsing into such a paranoid spiral. "Fear is natural," I was sure she would say. "Fear is good. Fear is the universe whispering in your ear, I want you to survive."
Now, you have written a couple of other teen books before this, so what made you have the jump into something adult?
I really just felt, it feels like very personal for me. I really just feel like I grew up. I feel like I was a teenager. I had a protracted teenagedom, and suddenly around age 33, I felt I'm grown up now. I'm ready to write from the point of view of an adult, not the point of view of a teen. I feel like I more relate to an adult point of view, whereas previously I'd related more to a teen point of view.
Oh, well, yeah, that's actually a really cool answer to say. That's well thought out.
So I'm not sure if I'll ever go back to YA, because I'm just like, I feel like I'm grown up now.
I won't tell any of my friends who write teen books. It's okay if they can manage to still live there. That's fine.
No, it really is. I don't mean to say that as an insult to YA writers, because I love the things I wrote for YA, and I feel like it is really valuable to have talented writers who are still in that very teen headspace, so that teens can relate to it.
Yeah, I still read a wide range of everything. I was a children's librarian for many years. So I still read quite a bit of teen, less children's now, but quite a bit of teen. There's just such great quality, out there that there's fantastic things to see. Now, what are you working on now, or are you working on something now?
It's been a struggle. I spent the last 1.5 years writing the first 100 pages of 3 books in a row that I then just had to put in a death folder. So, I think I've hit on something now. I don't want to say too much about it, but I feel like fourth time's the charm, and I have that feeling again where I'm like, this is it. I'm not just kind of wasting my own time. I'm not just, goofing off. This is it. So I am excited. But I think it's going to be another sort of historical fiction, but recent history.
Okay, so that's just.
I think I'm going to go to the 70s.
Oh, the 70s. and as somebody who spent some quality time in the 80s, like I have to say that it was very fun for me to like have all the references, because you do have a lot of specific references, and like just the part you read with Sally Jesse Raphael, I was just like, oh, Sally Jesse.
Oh yeah, I mean that selection I read is from a real Sally Jesse Raphael episode that I found on YouTube, and I thought the episode was so perfect. I was like, I don't need to change this. I just want to show what really happened on this Sally Jesse Raphael episode.
Wow, that's extra cool now that I know that was a real episode. I was not expecting that it was actually, because that could have just been pulled out of anywhere.
And because this story is so sensational and so many wild things happen, it was really important to me to ground it as much as possible in the reality of the media landscape that was occurring at the time.
All right, cool. I can certainly remember the Kool-Aid ads.
Yep.
All that stuff too. So, I always have an important question that I ask everyone, which is, do you have the library card?
Oh, of course, of course. Of course. The library in my tiny town is only open 2 days a week, 3 hours each day. It's a very small town, but it's a wonderful library, and I, of course, have a library card. Librarians, teachers, they are the glue of society at this point. Libraries are a sacred space. They're so important. So absolutely.
All right. Good. Well, that's what I want to hear. That's the kind of answer I want to hear. Well, it has been fantastic chatting with you. Thank you so much for coming down today and having this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, continued good luck with Rainbow Black
and
working on your newest one.
Great, and thank you to all your viewers.
All right, yeah, thank you so much. So thank you for joining us today with a novel idea, and please check back soon for our next episode. See you next time.